So, hello everybody. Welcome to this AMA, which is called the missing Decentralization, the missing link. I'm Luke, head of community, and of course I'm joined on the screen here by Spartacus Rex, our chief architect.
That's my name, Luke. My real name.
And so, as always, this recording, this call will be recorded, so you can catch up later, and we'll post that onto channels when that's ready. Thank you to those of you that already posted questions into Stage Questions channel on Discord. If any of you have any questions as we go, please drop them into there, and myself or one of the within the community team will pick it up and get it in front of us. So with that all out of the way, Spartacus Rex, over to you.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Thanks, community, for taking the time to listen in on what I hope won't be too boring. Those of you that have listened to me rant about these things before will probably have heard what I'm going to say. But I think what I'll do is I'll have a quick rant about decentralization and what it is and why it matters. And then I'm going to mention some interesting stories that I think have been in the news over the last few weeks, which are pertinent and relevant to this situation. And then I'll move on to discuss what it is that Minima is about to do with this topic in mind. Hopefully I can get through that, not too long. And then we'll open it up and we can have some questions. So, decentralization. It's a funny one, decentralization. When we started Minima, and I tried to get everyone to get behind Minima, and it was just, and I was even my good buddy and friend, CEO Hugo, he'd be like, decentralized, it's not a great word, but what's another word? And I'd be like, no, that's the point. And maybe 5 years ago, when this journey started, I don't think that many people actually really cared about the decentralization. It, number go up, staking, farming, all of this was important, but the decentralization bit wasn't. And so, recently this is coming to a head because obviously as they chip away slowly, they take little bits until suddenly you sit there and go, oh God, they've taken it all away. So why is it that it matters? Why do we need this thing called decentralization? And what has it got to do with blockchains, et cetera, et cetera? And so it's a very simple, logical argument that explains why we need this tech. And it's all based around your freedom, my freedom, my children's freedom, everybody's freedom. How can we be free? And for you to be able to be free, you need to be operating in a space that doesn't allow censorship. Yeah. You need to be able to do stuff without somebody being able to stop you from doing it. I could go on about how, this is in a digital space. This is in a verbal space. This is in a mental space. You need to be able to say what you want. You need to be able to think what you want. Doesn't mean you can actively act. I can't just walk down the street and punch someone in the face. But that's to do with our civilized nature. Yeah, we are civilized. We are not like animals out there. And what our civilized nature gives us, the only thing that I think it gives us, if I had to define it, was the fact that I am prepared to give certain rights to other humans. One of those rights is that they've got a right to live. Yeah, they've got a right to walk down the street without somebody just bashing them in the head. So this doesn't apply to physical actions. It doesn't apply to everything. But imagine if somebody could censor your thoughts. Imagine, you don't have to imagine what it's like when somebody can censor your words. Yeah, freedom of speech is so vital and important. For all aspects of life, because not being able to discuss things simply breaks the whole system. So you've got to be able to work in a free environment. And for it to be a free environment, it's got to be censorship resistant. And here's the point. For it to be a censorship resistant system, it must be decentralized. And the reason that is very easy to understand is because centralized systems are so easy to censor. So whenever you have a centralized point of failure, whenever you have somebody in the middle of it, that's where the attack takes place. There's no point attacking the leaf nodes. You've got to attack the center, and he's the one that, they're the ones that do all the dissemination. They're the ones that do, the important stuff. And so that is where your attack takes place. So the reason that decentralization is required is simply because centralized systems are too easy to attack. And then the final part of this is that the only known way, otherwise we'd have done it already, of achieving a decentralized system in the digital world is using a blockchain. And so the argument goes, look, I've got to have a blockchain because that's the only thing that does it in a decentralized way. And it's got to be decentralized because it's got to be censorship resistant. And it's got to be censorship resistant because I want to be free. And those are the steps. And if any of those steps are missing, then you're not going to be free. And so if decentralization isn't there, it's not going to work. And what we see around us and what we see in lots of other chains and what we see happening out there is called decentralization theater. Yeah. There's simply no point doing any of this if it's not going to be decentralized. Frankly, that is at the top of the pile. And it's so high above everything else that without that, everything else doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how many transactions per second you can process. It doesn't matter what your scripting language is. It doesn't matter whether you can do the ZK rollups or you can do all this other stuff. It's like, is it decentralized? Is it? Because if you can do that, then we can talk about all the other things. But if you can't do that, then nothing else matters. And this is why it's so important. And the fact is that decentralized systems are really hard. And they're not only hard in a technical sense to run, they're hard on you, the user. They expect far more from you. Centralization is so powerful. It's so efficient. Clearly getting one person to do something rather than 10,000 is going to be much more efficient. That's 10,000 times more efficient. So there is a creep to, I'll just do this little thing in a centralized way because it's so much easier and so much quicker and so much more efficient. And then everything works really, really well. And that's the step you've got to be very careful not to take. And in fact, I would add that sometimes you're going to have to make some decisions that you probably think is, this is bad. This is going to be, this is going to be problematic. This is going to cause issues. Specifically because you're trying to preserve the decentralization, without which none of what we're doing matters. So that's why decentralization is so important. That's why Minima strives to be the most decentralized blockchain out there. That's why the only thing that matters to us is decentralization. That's why the sacrifices we have made in terms of what it is you can do with Minima, how fast the chain runs, what scripting language you can do, what the possibilities that you can do, because it's got to work in a decentralized environment. It's very simple to just say, well, look, actually, I'm only going to get these 100 people to run it on really, really big bad boy computers so we can do lots of really cool stuff. I'm not denying that you can't do cool things. Of course, you can do these cool things, but then you've broken the tenet. You've broken the fact that it's decentralized. So what are some of the stories that has occurred in the past couple of weeks? So the first one I think I'm going to talk about is drive chains, which I think is very, very interesting because Bitcoin understands this. Yeah? Everybody sort of gets annoyed with Bitcoin because it doesn't do all the cool things that you can do all the other things. But what Bitcoin does do is it tries to remain decentralized. And when you're in a decentralized way, it's very, very hard to get it to change anything because who's doing that? Who's in charge of that? Where's the Bitcoin's Vitalik? Where's the consensus? Where the Ethereum's consensus? Where are the developers that are just going to say, look, everybody's going to jump onto this new network? It just doesn't have that. And although it can seem like a toxic environment, if you just read between the lines of what's going on, it's trying very hard to not fall down the pitfalls and make the same mistakes that are so evident now when you look through what is happening all the other blockchains. And so drive chains, very interesting. For those of you that don't know, there's a hoo-ha going on about this on CT and forums everywhere. And there's this proposal that says, look, we want to do drive chains, which is basically this way of doing side chains off Bitcoin. Okay. But the way that you do the side chains off Bitcoin, which you can already do, there's already RSK, there's already Liquid that use federated models where you send the money to a multi-sig of 15 users and you need 11 signatures, blah, blah, blah. So you can already do this. But what drive chains does that is different is that it's a POW-backed side chain, which is blind merged mine. What does that mean? That means that I can mine Bitcoin just as normal. I'm mining Bitcoin. But at the same time, I can mine another same time without it affecting my Bitcoin hash rate. All of my hash is still using Bitcoin, but actually, because I do this little clever thing, I can also use that hash rate to mine something else. Initially, this seems like a great idea. Initially, you're like, well, why, and why does he want to do this? He cares about Bitcoin, yeah. Truthcoin, the guy who's pushing for this, who's been pushing for it for 8 years. I remember the first post of this on the Bitcoin email list, and he wants this because he says that the miners are not getting paid enough money. He wants this because fees, another very interesting topic when related to Minima, fees are too small. And he's saying, well, look, if you're only paying your miners this much money, the miners on Bitcoin almost get paid less than the Friend Tech chain, which has been running for like 3 weeks on Coinbase's chain. And they're like, how can we be the digital future of the world and all the money if we're not paying them enough money? Yeah, our security, Bitcoin security, is based on how many fees you pay. And so Truthcoin says, well, look, let's let them mine lots of other chains at the same time, because then they'll make more money. So a Bitcoin miner that was making this much can now make much more because he's also mining all these other chains. Again, on first reflection, you're thinking, that sounds like a good idea. Yeah, why wouldn't we want to do this? Why wouldn't you want to do this? I'll tell you why you don't want to do this. And I'm not a proponent of drive chains, and I don't think they should do it. And I think they should use the current system where you just have federated models, et cetera, et cetera. The reason you don't want to do drive chains is because it impacts decentralization. And the reason it impacts decentralization is because you're now changing one of the fundamental building blocks of Bitcoin. And what you're saying is that this miner, gets a cost per hash, gets a price per hash. So if you do this many hashes, this is how much money you make. Nice, simple equation. It's the same for everybody. If you do this many hashes, you're going to get this much money. And this is true for all Bitcoin miners. And then you try to find the cheapest way of getting those hashes, but the price per hash is the same. Now, if you inject drive chains into this system, what does this mean? This means I'm just running Bitcoin. I don't want to do any of this drive chain nonsense. I can't be bothered with the massive databases that I'm going to have to run, blah, blah, blah. I'm making what I was making before. Joey, sitting over there, who used to have the same hash rate as me, is now mining these other chains, and he's making more money than me. And that means that his price per hash is more than mine, which means that I'm now sitting there thinking, God, he's got the same hash rate as me, but he's actually making more money than me. Now, he may have to be running an Ethereum Quadra tech. Yeah, he's running some massive mega chain, which means you need lots of servers and lots of this and whatever. It doesn't matter. It doesn't influence me in any way. It doesn't affect Bitcoin, but it just means that he's now making more money for hashing than I'm making. And what does this mean? This means that it centralizes. This means that he can now become bigger than me, quicker than me. This means that economies of scale kick in. This means that now you're just going to be making the bigger miners even bigger. Yeah, I'm not able to run all these big chains. I'm a small miner. I specifically do Bitcoin. I don't have I've just got my hashing units and I've got my computers. I don't want to do all of that. I've got to do it. You're forcing me to do it, because if I don't do it, I'm going to be left behind. This is the game the miners play. And so when they try to get drive chains involved, they're fundamentally changing one of the building blocks of Bitcoin that clearly leads to centralization, clearly is going to make some miners more money than others in an unfair way. It's like, I've got the same hash rate as you. Why are you making more money than me? It's like, because I'm actually running these other computers. I'm running an Ethereum sidechain. Yeah, a nightmare that is trying to actually stuff a Ethereum full node into my mining equipment. And I'm like, well, I can't handle that. It's just like, well, then you're going to get priced out. I'm going to make loads more money than you. I'm going to be able to buy more miners than you. I'm going to be able to slowly squeeze you until you're kicked off the network because you won't be efficient enough. So the whole argument revolves around, are we impacting decentralization? Yeah, that's what it boils down to when you understand what is going on. And that's why I'm not up for it. And that's why many Bitcoiners aren't up for it. And all you see is the others going, yeah, it'd be totally cool to run Ethereum off a sidechain or Solana or whatever, and miners be making more money. And they don't understand that the game is very, these are very carefully balanced equations between these people and how they set this up and how they remain in balance with each other. And you certainly don't want to be messing with that. So that's drive chains, decentralization. Don't mess with it. The other one I'd like to mention is Coinbase. So Base went down about 2 weeks ago, didn't it? Just stopped. Something happened. It stopped. And everyone was like, oh, can you fix it? And Coinbase is like, yeah, we're going to fix it. We're on it. Now, I like Coinbase. I think they're a great company. Yeah, they've onboarded millions of users. They're 1,000 times more successful than people trying to use Bitcoin Core. Yeah, they're 1,000 times more successful than any other chain. They've got 100 million users. Yeah, totally centralized, totally custodial. Yeah, you can build these systems on top of decentralized systems. There's no problem with that at all. So Coinbase as a company is great. And you can trust them. Yeah, I'm not even saying I don't trust Brian. Yeah, I mean, he's all right. Yeah, I mean, he looks like Lex Luthor, but he's okay. And, I don't think he's going to steal my money. That's not the point. It's not about trust. The point is, when base went down and nobody could use the chain, there was a single point of failure. There was only one entity that could then fix that. It was not decentralized. It was totally centralized, which means that it's not when Brian decides to pinch our money that we need to be worried about. It's when the government knocks on his door and tells him to turn it off, or he and his family are going to jail, that you need to be worried about, because he will. I would. Yeah, there's no way that you would withstand that level of a personal attack. And so you have to be involved in systems that do not have these centralized single points of failure. So the issue with base going down was not that Coinbase are bad. They're a great company. These things happen. Software breaks. I understand. The issue is that it's like, so basically we're just waiting for the knock. We're just waiting for you to be told, to take my money by the government, or for you to be told, it's not a trust issue with you. It's a trust issue with TPTB, with the powers that be. So, clear as evident. I'm unsure. I can understand why why Coinbase would want to run an Ethereum chain, because now there's loads of developers. It's like, as I've mentioned on other chats, it's like a really complicated PHP server. That's what you've got with Ethereum. You've got this big server that allows you to do some complicated, messy stuff, which if you didn't have to run in a decentralized way, you could probably have done it in a much better way. Yeah, if you could have just written it in PHP, you probably would have got more developers, but it doesn't matter. So that's why they're doing it, but it's totally not some sort of censorship. It's a system where you are waiting for them to turn it off. It's not in no way basically a blockchain. Yeah, there's no reason you would never ever use a blockchain for anything if it wasn't going to be decentralized. It's a complete nightmare. Yeah, it's really inefficient. It's really hard. It's constantly breaking. It's getting everybody into consensus on loads of nodes. Why would you use that system? Because you get the decentralization. Okay, that I can understand. But you're not even going to be decentralized, and you're going to use a blockchain. This doesn't make sense. There's no reason to use a blockchain if you're not going to be decentralized. So that was quite an interesting story, I thought. It's like showed clearly what it is that they're trying to do. And then the third one was Vitalik at his conference, espousing how everybody needs to start running these massive Ethereum nodes. And I like Vitalik, very smart guy. Yeah, clearly he's done lots of good. But centralization is a one-way street, sir. And what I mean by that is that there's no way Ethereum is going to become more decentralized now. Yeah, because the things you have sold to gain the powers that you have, you're going to have to give up those powers. You can't have both. It doesn't work that way. You can't just say, look, we built this system now that's totally cool. Now we're going to decentralize. And it's like, whoa. Actually, what you did is you decided to have all these totally cool features, and you sacrifice your decentralization to get those features. And because it's not possible to have those features in our decentralized system, it has to be centralized. Yeah, you need to have these massive nodes. Last week that we're going to start decentralizing. What does that mean? You're basically just going to have 5 companies, and you're going to sell the stuff, and you're going to run those companies rather than one company. It's going to be just as bad. You just can't do the same things in a decentralized way that you can do in a centralized way. And unless you're prepared to say, we're going to have to cut all of these features, we're going to have to cut all of this ability, you can't process this much stuff, you can't process this, you can't go back. Which is why you need to be very careful at the beginning. Which is why Bitcoin is very careful about what it adds. Which is why Minima is very careful about what it does. Because once you go down that path, there's no coming back. Yeah, you can gain your bells, your whistles, you can get all these functions, and you can do all this stuff, but you'd have to remove them to go back to the decentralization. And so Vitalik asking people at this conference and wherever it was and saying, hey, we all need to now start thinking about running Ethereum. It's like, it's too late, mate. You had that chance. You had the option. And instead of saying, you know what, we're really going to, we're going to restrict Ethereum, they were like, no, we're going to have this shard beacon thing, that we're going to have 64 chains, not one chain, and we're going to use 2 terabytes a year rather than saying, actually, there's a movement on Bitcoin to say you got to have smaller blocks. When Ethereum, who had a shot, in my honest opinion, there was a chance that Ethereum could have won this game, but not anymore. Yeah, they've made too many decisions that impacted on the most important thing, the only thing that matters. And now, useful as it is, blah, 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 I can't see it lasting, another 10, 20 years. I just see it being a centralized solution, which people can use as and when they choose to, but it won't be your store of wealth. It won't be where you keep your money. because that's the money is different from computation. Money is our value. And what people are really interested in is like, is my money safe? And he's like, oh yeah, but do you know you can stake in this LP farm via the, and I'm like, oh wait, is my money safe? I see. The decentralization is important over here. Is my money safe? Is the most important thing over here. That's what people care. 99% of people. That's what they don't care about LP this or the other, or the JPEGs, the ordinals. They don't care about any of that. And that's the thing that this blockchains that Minima is trying to be. We're trying to be your money, and we're trying to be the most valuable thing on Earth. Yeah, that's what Bitcoin's trying to be and succeeding currently. Yeah, and nothing else gets close because nothing else realizes that actually they've got to give up this idea that they can have all of these things as well as being decentralized. This is why the decentralization matters. It is the fundamental component that is required for you, for me, to be able to run in a free world. Actually, on that point about Coinbase stopping, I would like to mention, which I did post on Chatter, I might add. I'm not quite sure what my reach on Chatter is, probably about 30 or 40 people, actually. But if any of you are not on Chatter, I would urge you to get on it. It's quite fun. It's it's decentralized. There's no server. I don't even know what people are saying on it. I can't even know what they're saying because all the messages are encrypted when you send them to each other. So not only don't know who's on it, I don't even know what you're saying on it. I don't even know how many people read my messages. Yeah, like at the beginning when we were writing Chatter, people were saying, well, can't you find out how far people can send a message to somewhere that says, look, I got your message and this, and then it's like, no, because this is the point. This is one of those things about decentralization that I could do easily in a centralized system. Yeah, Twitter, this, I could send my messages out to everybody automatically. But you can't have that in a decentralized system. I can't know who reads it. I can't know who you spoke to after I spoke to you in the pub. After I told you my idea in the pub, you went off and you spoke to other people. And it's like, how do I know who we spoke to? It's like, you don't know. Yeah, that's the point. That's why it works. That's why it scales. That's why there's no limit to how many people can actually be on Chatter and how many people can be chatting about it. But anyway, I'd just like to mention that, with all these chains breaking and going down and this and that, there was a hairy moment for Minima about 6 weeks ago when, as I refer to him, he who shall not be named, spoke to me on Discord and said, look, Pat, I've thought of this attack that I'd like to run on Minima. Yeah, this thing. And I said, that sounds interesting. Why don't we run it on testnet first and see what happens so we can see what's going on. And he was like, well, I don't think it's going to work on testnet. I need it on mainnet. And I was like, no, please, just run it on the testnet so we can just, check it out and see what happens. This is like Friday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. He was like, oh, okay. I was like, fine. Then hear nothing, no problem. Long week, Friday, fine. At the end of the week, you do as you do. You go, you have a beer, that's it. Go to bed, sleeping. Saturday morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, phone starts ringing. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Messages on Discord saying, I was like, I wake up, as old people do in the middle of the night. And I said, and I did think to myself, I said, don't look at the phone, Pat. Don't look at it. Yeah, it's the weekend. You need your weekend. You're tired. You haven't slept. And I thought, no, I'll just have a quick cheeky peek. So I looked at the phone. Minima, down, and actually, he who shall not be named had launched his attack on the network at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon. By about, midnight, network's down. And when I say network's down, what I mean is the phone nodes, most of the phone nodes couldn't handle it. Server nodes handled it fine. Phone nodes couldn't handle it. Okay, off we go. We start fixing. But the important thing about this story is that even when I estimate about 60% of the phone, 60% of the network of the, just couldn't handle it. He basically coin flooded the network, a memory error, blah, blah, blah. We fixed it now. Once you know what a bug is, you can always fix it. But until you know what it is, until you've been shown it, you can't think, what will happen. There's too many different scenarios. So we did fix it. But even when 60% of the phones went down, 60% of the network went down, Minima kept on ticking. It never actually stopped. The blocks became 40% slower for about 2 hours before the so if there were every 20 seconds, every minute and a half rather than every 50 seconds. But it didn't stop, and it kept on ticking. And I thought, actually, And once I'd relaxed, once I'd fixed everything by about, Sunday evening, we were pushing out the fixes and blah, blah, blah. It struck me that God Minima is really quite hard to take down. Yeah, there is no single point of failure because all of you do everything. This is the antithesis of Coinbase's chain. This is the antithesis of any sort of centralization, because actually, even if there were 3 of you on the chain, it would work. You'd need it to be a slower, you needed to be a slower release. But that made me very happy to think that Minima is so decentralized that even if you just destroyed half the network, which we're back on by Monday morning, we did something and we fixed some memory stuff and whatever, we're still in our infancy. We're certainly not a battle hardened piece of software like or Ethereum, that takes time to do. But even in that scenario, Minima kept on ticking, no problems at all. So, we're doing something right. Right, and so what I was going to, and then finally to wrap up, what I'm going to say is that we're about to do something on Minima, which no other chain has done. We're about to do something on Minima, which I've been yapping about for a good couple of years now, actually. And it's scary, and it is going to require something from you. And the fact is that asking anything of you is infinitely more than asking nothing of you. So whatever it is that I'm asking you to do is going to be a lot, because it is more than nothing. And what we're going to do now on Minima, which is to do with decentralization, is that so with all of these chains, with all of these networks, with every peer-to-peer network, how do you get on the network? Yeah, you download the software, whatever it is, and you go grow. And then the software says, okay, where's the party? Where's all the users? Where's the peers that I can connect to? And then off we go on the network. Just that initial contact. How do I get to the club to have a good time? Where's the party? Somebody's got to tell you where the party is. And currently, that's us. And what I mean by that is that currently in the app that you download, there are some hard-coded peers. Yeah, just a port, an IP and a port. And we run some nodes. And when you turn the application on, it says, hey, can I have some other nodes? And I say, yeah. As soon as you speak to one person, yeah, because the way the network works, we use this rather interesting peer-to-peer network system where when I speak to someone, I say to him, hey, who are you connected to? And he goes, well, I'm connected to, who are you connected to? And I tell him who I'm connected to, and we swap a link. And I say, well, look, why don't you connect to him and I'll connect to one of yours? And then I've got somebody else I'm speaking to, and I'll say, hey, who are you connected to? And then we'll say, hey, why don't we swap a link? And so once you're at the party, it's party time. Yeah, once you're there, you never need to speak to anyone again. You're sovereign then. You can just get other peers because you know someone. Once you reach the party, you can meet people at the party. That's fine. But how do you get to the party? We tell you how to get there. And that's really bad because that's centralized. Because that means that if those servers were turned off, not because I want to turn them off because I'm a bad guy, but if I was told to turn them off, or if they blew up, or if something happened, nobody new could get on the network. All the people who were at the party would still be having their party, and that's fine, but nobody new would turn up. That doesn't sound very decentralized to me. That doesn't sound like a system that could withstand a state-level attack. And so what are we doing? We're removing those peers. So now when you open the application, it goes, where's the party? And it's like, whoa, there's no IPs in the application. What can I do? How am I going to get to the party? Running around in panic. Very easy. You need to know somebody at the party. And they tell you where the party is. And we've tried to make this as simple as possible. We try to do it. We've got pop-ups and this, and anybody who's in the dev testing group will have seen what it does. But basically, from an actual GUI perspective, it's like it pops up and says, give me someone at the party. Give me an IP. Give me a link to somewhere. And anybody else at the party can send you that link any way they want. WhatsApp, chat, you can do it over the phone. You can do it however you want. You just need to know someone. They send you this data. You put it into the app. Boom. You're off. You're at the party. To me, I'm like, it's easy. No problem. They're going to find this, they're going to find this so easy. And we've given it out to all the testing. We've given it, and the pushback has been interesting. Unironically, I'm like, oh, they really find this difficult. Yeah, we're really asking for what seemed like a very simple thing. It's turning into sort of like, what if I don't know someone? What if I just download it in? It's like, how can you not, if you don't know, you can go to a website. You can go to Discord, not this door. You can go to, and what's also very interesting is that until we actually decided to do this, these other solutions didn't have to crop up. So now I run I run a website. Europe runs a website. Some of the members on our website. There's 2 or 3 different Discord groups going now, specifically about Minima related stuff, which is amazing. And these things don't appear. These things don't feel they have a need until there is a need to fill. And so only once we have done this will all of these interesting little solutions, which means, look, you can just do this, or you can just type that in, or there's always this website over here which tells you something, or you can just come to Discord or whatever. And until we try it, we're not going to know how it's going to play out. Until we see how it plays out, we're not going to know what we need to do to get it to work. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, we're going to remove these peers. We're going to give you the application. And from your perspective, what that means is, A, you're going to have to do, something at the beginning, which can be a 20-second job. It can take you 20 seconds to do it. Take you 5 minutes. It could take you an hour because you're like, I can't find someone on the network. But I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry that you're going to have to go through that. But what it also means is that you are now free of us. What it also means is that we cannot censor you. The network is now independent of Minima GmbH. We play no part in its running. Like, from a mining perspective, which is very weird for a proof of work network, we already play no part on the network. The network itself manages itself completely. We have no special nodes. Nobody listens to us. We just run a node on the net. We are not special in any way in that regard. But we are the current gatekeepers of new users. And once we've cut that, the ship is sailing, on its own. Once we have cut that, you are now going to be able to, it means that if Minima did this, it won't. I hope, God bless it, will be here years from now. But if anything happened to us, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Don't tell me that if the Ethereum Foundation disappeared, Ethereum would be fine. Don't tell me that if Solana Foundation disappeared, Solana would be fine, or Cardano, or Coinbase Base. Yeah, or any of these other chains who've got Aava, who've got these massive, they've got billions of dollars. What are they going to do with it? But you've got these big organizations that basically run your chain, that sustain the chain, that maintain the chain, that do everything. Not so on Minima's case. Frankly, and this is going to be, we've added an annoyance. Yeah, clearly, if I was a software developer working for a big company and they were like, we need to make this software as usable and friendly as possible for the users, so we definitely can't be doing any of this. And it's like, in this area where we are, in this field that we're working in, you're going to have to take a bit of pain. You're going to have to take a little bit of a hit, because otherwise you're giving up that decentralization. Decentralization means it's on you. It means you can't be reliant on me and on Minima and on these centralized organizations. It's almost like the inverse of what you'd expect from a normal software company. Now, obviously, we can try and make this as painless as possible. Obviously, we're trying everything we can, and you can add it as a command line param, and you can do this, and there's lots of different ways of doing it, and that will only improve with time. But as far as a software, is this going to be a better user experience for the user? Initially, no. No software company would go for this. They'd be like, no, we're not doing it then. And it's like, nope, you don't understand. You see, you've taken the easy choice. You've done what everybody else does. You've said, look, we'll keep it centralized. We'll go centralized and make it easier for you. Yeah, let you do more things. Let it, make it, more efficient, less friction, all of that. And it's like, no, you need a bit of friction. Freedom has a cost. Yeah, a cost to you. And if I take that from you, then I'm making you less free, and I'm not up for that. So we're launching that in the next couple of weeks, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. And I know that you will breeze it, and I know that you will be able to do it no problem. So good luck with that, and let's keep on, realizing why it is we do what we do and why decentralization is so important. So I think
we've got some questions to run through. Thanks for that.
Okay.
Thanks for that, there, Mr. Rex. So just out of interest, we were talking about Bitcoin earlier on as being like the OG granddaddy of decentralized blockchains. How do they do it compared to what we're looking to do?
They have it. They have the peers in the application. They do that. But if you say, look, this is Coinbase's node, and or this is they've got big nodes. Riot has nodes. These massive billion-dollar organizations. But yeah, you're going to have another little rant now, just to say that is a really bad thing, because actually what's happening with Bitcoin And this is another thing to do with the drive chains that I didn't want to get, didn't want to start rolling on that as well, because, the fees. The fees is a real issue. So Bitcoin knows that Riot is going to be there. Bitcoin knows that these massive miners are going to be there because they make so much money. But what we're seeing is these massive miners become bigger and bigger anyway. So whether or not drive chains is a centralizing factor, and it'll only speed up the centralization. But they're talking about this because they see it happening in real time. I'm seeing this. I'm seeing these miners, 2 or 3 miners have the hash rate. And and interestingly, what they were saying is that if you did do a drive chains, then it would basically take 2 or 3 decisions, because drive chains, I can steal your coins. Not on Bitcoin, but on drive chain. On Bitcoin, a miner can't steal your coins. You can only screw with the chain. But on drive chain, side chain, the miners can actually pinch your coins, which is another issue, which I don't care about really, because either you trust these people or you don't when you're on a side chain, blah, blah, blah. But the fees is a real problem. Yeah, the fact that they're paying people to secure them is now starting to rear its head, because what's happening is that the people that get paid the most become bigger because they make more money, so they can buy more mining, so they become even bigger, so they make even more money, so they can buy even more mining equipment, etc., etc. And this is something else that Minima sidesteps, because we don't pay someone to do the work. We do the work ourselves. We are the people that secure the network. And this is a really important thing. So Bitcoin puts the address of the biggest miners into the application because they know they're not going anywhere. Of course not. They're worth, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars. All they've got to do is run an IP. Fantastic. And that's a problem for me. Not because I think those miners will be taken down, but because I think 10, 15 years from now, there will only be one miner. As I've said, there'll just be one organization. We won't know who buys all of those organizations and who's actually in charge of all of them. Yeah. Especially the way the American mining, because America's got a lot of miners now, and you need to be regulated. And all it takes is for them to say, KYC your transactions. I need to know who's doing these transactions. You're not adding them to your blocks. That's a really big deal. And just saying, that's okay, there'll still be 10% of the blocks that don't do KYC. What is the price going to be to get into those blocks? Yeah, if there's a whole section of society that can only get into these 10% and not the 90% because they're not prepared to do KYC, that means that the fees are going to be stratospheric on those 10%. It's going to be completely unfair. You're going to be treated differently to somebody else using the chain because of the miners. That's not something you want. That doesn't sound like a very free system to me. So yeah, lots of things to think about with regards to that. But fees, very bad. Yeah, it's clearly centralizing, and the whole drive chains thing just centralizes it even faster. And that's how they get around it. That's how they all get around it, which is why we'll be the only ones that have done it, which is why I like it.
Nice. I'm going to keep running with your party analogy because it works. I love that.
Okay.
So I'm already at the party. We push the update out. Will I need to do anything?
No. So once you're at the party, and you've got peers, and you're speaking to them, and you speak to someone, and you say, hey, who's that guy over there? And you say, oh, and who's that guy? Oh, all right. So once you're at the party, you're fine. Then all you need to worry about is just the stability of Minima as an application, which I'm going to put my hands up and say we're about 97, 98%. But even 98% is like, what, so 2% of the time it crashes. How often? Because it's that like, you've got, 50,000 users and you're talking 2%. That's like thousands and thousands of users. So as far as this peers decentralization thing, it's just a question of getting there. And once you're at the party, the software should be able to handle it, and you'll be fine, and you'll never have to worry about it again. Then you can worry about the other things like, has it crashed?
And this includes if you need to restore from a backup.
Then you need to restore from a backup, or all the chain resyncing now is working much, much better. So I have to say that from a technical point of view, I think we've sort of crossed a Rubicon where it's pretty hard for you to actually lose your coins. I think in the first 3 months it was barrage, like opening the floodgates. After we realized that, no offense, none of you had actually tested the application. All you cared about were your IC coins. And so when we actually launched the application and you actually started to lose your coins, you're like, blah, blah, blah. And we were like, yeah, but you've been running it for 2 years. You never mentioned this before. And it's like, you. So I would say that from a technical level, we have reached a good point. We're not Bitcoin yet. We're not 10,000 man years of code down the road yet, but we are at a good point with the code. But as far as this little element of getting to the party goes, once you're at the party, you're there, and it should be fine, and it should never be a problem again. And if it is, and it says, oh, your peers went because you were offline for 3 weeks and something happened, or there was something happened, a bug happened, your P2P database got, what you have to do? have to do it again. You have to speak to someone and say, can you give me a peer? And then you go back to the party, and then it's fine, and you're off and you're partying again. You're listening to great tunes. So that's the worst that can happen. But if we do our job correctly, and if we write the code correctly, and if we fix all the bugs correctly, then once you're there, you're there. Once you've touched heaven, you've made it.
Is there a circumstance where somebody could give you a fake connection? What would that look like?
Great question. This only works on proof of work chains, Minima. This wouldn't work on a proof of stake chain. Why? Because proof of work chains are objective. Proof of work chains, you can tell that you're on the right chain. And what I mean by that is that if I show you two chains, you can say, this is the right one. I don't need to ask anybody. I can tell you immediately that there's more work on this one than this one. So this is the right chain. On a proof of stake chain, I can't. On a proof of stake chain, I can fake the chain to such a degree that you cannot distinguish between the two chains without asking Coinbase or asking somebody and saying, which one of these chains is the real chain? And so what's really interesting is that because we can do that, because on Minima we are a proof of work chain, if somebody were to give you dodgy, like what's the attack? If somebody were to give you some dodgy nodes that spoke to their private network, firstly, none of your coins, none of the spend would be happening on the main chain because you'd be on the side chain. I guess the point would be if they got you on the chain, then they could buy something off you with fake coins from their chain. Yeah. The point is that as soon as you meet someone, as soon as you speak to a single person who is on the different chain, you would know, and you'd be like, "Oh, look, this is actually the right chain." So what I mean is that the cordoning off attack, the segregation attack, where I just put you into my little chain of things and nobody knows. As soon as you speak to someone, like you might know someone on the chain, your friend, you got a friend who's on on WhatsApp or whatever. You two can share notes. You can do this at any time. You don't have to do it just at the beginning. If you want to just share notes, you can, and it's fine. And we scan it or whatever. As soon as you've seen the real chain, you know, and you don't have to ask anybody. And you're like, oh, actually, this is the right chain. This is the wrong chain. I'm not on it, so I can't fake it longer than I can only stop you from seeing. Pretty hard to do, frankly. Very hard to do. Yeah. So I'd really have to censor all of the information that you were getting from the rest of the world for you not to be able to find out that you want, is your top block the same? You talk to your mate and it's like, what's your top block? It's like, it's different from yours. Okay, well, let's share peers. Oh, look, you were on the right chain. You're on the heavier chain. I'm on the lighter chain. Or I'm on the heavier chain. You're on the wrong chain. So what I like about it is that it is very easy for you to fix it. You don't have to ask anybody. You will always know whether the two of you, which one of you is right and which one of you is wrong. But yeah, there could be some sticky moments, but I can't think of, it'd be almost impossible to pull anything.
Okay, cool. You obviously got developers on the chain. They're running test chains in order to test their work. Would they need to do anything with adding a peer?
No, when you run your private network, then it's different. Obviously, you're just talking to each other, and so that's fine. So we do it anyway. You're right. So on a test chain, I'm connecting to 127.0 or 80, whatever, blah blah blah. So those of us who do run multi-node test networks already know what the hell's going on. It's really more for the non-technical people out there, for you guys, just to get on the network. I mean, I'm very interested in knowing how it goes. I'm curious to see how it plays out and what happens and whether there's just a complete shitstorm. Excuse me. And everybody's like, I can't get on the network, and it's like, well, here's the list. Here's the link. Put that in. Oh no, I want.
So that leads me neatly onto the question of why now? Why are we doing this now?
Good question. Why are we doing this now? Why not now? What are we waiting for? How much more central? Because we need to see how it's going to play out. This may take months for us to sort out. This may require tweaks here and there. This may require us to rejig the way the beginning of the app goes. This may require us not to just, those of you who install the app and you get the introduction screens, it's a narrative question. It's a sociological question. It's an I need to explain it to you in simple enough terms for you to be able to do this. And if Minima has taught me anything, it's that whatever I think is simple isn't. And however I'm explaining it, so obviously there could be better ways of explaining it. And so this could take months to, years. It could take a while for us to actually figure out how to do this. And, is it tap the phones together? Just tap your phones. Maybe it might be nice for you to just tap phones with everybody you meet who's on Minima. That might be a way. of always ensuring that everybody's just spreading and just checking and whatever, but it's got to be as we can make it as inoffensive and as efficient and as frictionless as possible, but we need to start the process before we can see the issues, before we can start to fix the issues of trying to do what is technically this very simple thing, but that I know, community-wise is not a simple thing. Yeah. So the sooner we start, the better. The sooner we try to fix this, the better. The sooner we can see what it is that we're going to have to do. So we can wait, or we can go for it now. We can pull that Band-Aid off and see what happens. I want you all to wear this as a badge of honor. I want you to be able to not laugh and deride other blockchains, because I feel that we're all in this together, and I feel that their work is valuable and that we're all working to a common goal. But you can say, look, I run Minima. I actually, I'm not like you. I do my own. I run my own node. I check everything. I know what's happening. I got to the network myself. I don't need anybody to help me. I am sovereign. Yeah, this is a badge of honor. This is something that you can feel proud of doing, in my honest opinion.
No, it's very true. So I was just seeing in the chat a few people as we've been going along here saying that this is just, the impression I get is they feel it's a scary thing. Being asked to do something that ordinarily on any other chain would just be done for you, and that is kind of the price.
Yes.
If proper true decentralization, you kind of have to have some of this, what might be seen as a barrier, but it's easily overcome once you know what you're doing, and we're going to be putting out lots of videos and documents and help. And of course, we're in channels too. We're there to help people through this transition. But does beg the question: do you think it could prevent mass adoption of Minima, having this unusual step for the average user?
Until we get it to a smooth enough process, yeah, that's the truth. I won't lie to you. Obviously, this process, this whatever we're doing, needs to be as efficient and clean, as simple. Maybe gamify it. Good old Ryan, Miss Ryan. He wanted to gamify it. Because the truth is, it's not going to be me and Luke. Yeah, and it's not going to be the tiny Minima team sorting this out. It's going to be you in the Discord. It's going to be people asking. You're going to have to be able to go, it's easy, do this. That's all you got to do. Here's my list. There's a very simple way of doing it in the app. Share my peers. Here it is. It opens it up, and if you're using the phone, you can send it by WhatsApp or Telegram or whatever. It's more a question of whether the community can handle this, and whether you can get people on board in this way, and whether you can make them understand why it's so cool. Whether you can make them think, oh, this is different from the other chains. I'm actually, you're actually doing something which the other. I sort of like the fact that this is not the way the other chains do it. I like that. This. If we could narratively spin this in a way that actually made people think this is something I do want to get involved in. This is the antithesis of what I'm saying out there with all these other chains. Then maybe that could be the catalyst for mass adoption, because they're like, finally, one of them's understood. Finally, one of them understands that actually decentralization all that matters, and for it to be decentralized, you can't have a center. I can't have, we can't be going through us. It can't be us doing this. It's going to have to be you doing it. How do you explain it to people? How do you handhold them through that process? Simple though it is, I understand. Yes, scary. But I'll tell you one thing. We're not going to know how to make that system smooth without trying it out. And we're not going to be able to fix it unless unless we see how it plays out. So if we want to have this system working, it might be, a sub-audible sound that your phone makes. I notice Chromecast does that. Whenever I'm trying to click, when I'm trying to connect to devices in your house, you don't hear it, and it's not connected to Wi-Fi yet. So how does the phone know? You ever thought that when you connect a new Chromecast device, and it's like, I'm looking for devices. What's it doing? It's doing something. It's doing some beeping noises. Maybe your phone could make a little beep, 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 beep noise as you're wandering around. Anybody who's got a Minima node, or it could do a broadcast Bluetooth thing. Yeah, with a power chain. Yeah, it's a small amount of data with all the headers. So you can see, there's a lot of work in this. It's not a fake. The beauty of power is that when I give you something powerful, you can tell, there's a lot of work in there. Yeah, these last blocks must have taken 50,000 people, because you can't fake it. So are these the sort of things that we're going to have to look into? So maybe you won't have to tell anybody. Maybe just walking down the street, you'll be able to pick up different peers from people as their phones let off these noises that you can't even hear. Yeah. We may not have to. It may just pan out much easier and smoother than that, and it might just work. And everyone's like, I don't know what I was scared about. I don't know what the problem was. But we need to try this. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to find out what it is that we need to do.
Absolutely. And change is scary, especially something that's not. It's fun
and exciting. Yeah.
Yes.
That's why we like horror movies. Scary, exciting, same thing. Different side, same coin.
Very much so. So the final question I have on this is obviously by removing the servers, that's one big vector for centralization that we're eliminating. What else remains for Minima to reach that full decentralization?
I mean, Satoshi had it right. He did it right. When he disappeared, if he was still here, Bitcoin wouldn't have made it, in my honest opinion. If he was still here, because everybody looks to that. So the development process is a tough one. And again, I might add, I feel Minima has done this correctly, because what does Minima do that none of the other chains do? We're finished. Even Bitcoin doesn't say that. Even Bitcoin's trying to work out what the next soft fork is going to do. They have the hard fork because of the buffer overflow on the integer time number, which means it's going to run out, but not for another 67 years. That's fine. But it's got to do a hard fork at some point. But even Bitcoin is like, what's the next feature we're going to try and get, into it? Minima doesn't do that. Minima's done. Minima's finished. Yeah, what it does is what it can do. It has code that allows you to increase the blockchain and increase the sizes. If you put that into their code, then you can do it. Doesn't mean you can't change anything. It means you have to have the code in the code that allows you to change the variables, in a decentralized, distributed, consensual way. So from that point of view, we have a big advantage. Yeah. If I were to be, hit by a bus tomorrow, there wouldn't be like, how are we going to implement that feature? There's no more features. There's nothing more to add. All I ever do is, optimize memory leaks, blah, 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 blah. And in fact, on that point, the APK is finished. As in, it's finished. As in, I never have to do anything on that again. Those of you that remember the previous APK, and now we've given you the mini hub APK, beautiful. Yeah. So your desktop version. I don't know how many of you use the desktop, but that's the only way I use it, and it looks amazing, and I would recommend it to you. But now with the APK, it's finished. And what I mean by that is that all I do is I put the latest version of Minima in, and then the mini hub starts. And the mini hub is just a mini dApp, which any of you could write. I'm not saying that we've got other, there's Yandex, whatever his, the one I saw. Amazing. I love it. Yeah. You could write your own mini hub. And all the applications and all the things that happen in your phone, they're mini dApps. Like you could rewrite those in any way you want to. It's kind of weird. It's like, wow, so the whole application can be updated without ever having to actually update the APK. The APK is like done. Yeah, that's another thing that's done. And the protocol is done. And actually all we've got is this Java jar application. Would I love to, somehow rewrite the database application, database libraries into that yard? Maybe crowbar out H2 and put something a bit more stable. And if I could find it, I've looked, I can't. Maybe just write it myself. Yeah, I'd like to do that. But as much as, so much of Minima is actually at a completed stage. And so much of the work that goes into Minima is simply to harden it, simply to make it more resilient and more stable in terms of the application it does. None of the work is about what features do I need to add, what things, are we going to be able to do drive? We can actually do a version of drive chains as it happens. But we had the benefit of hindsight when I came up with the scripting language. So lots and lots of things don't affect us the way it affects other chains. Like if you look at Ethereum and if you wiped out 25 members of the Ethereum community, you'd be in real trouble because there's only 25 of them who actually understand what's going on. There's only 25 of them who could actually sit down and say, look, we can do this. And if you got rid of them, you wouldn't have any of that, more of those upgrades or more of that stuff. Frankly, that'd be a good thing if you ask me. But that's not how they roll. Yeah, they want more features, they want more things. They're not interested in, keeping the decentralization, and that's, that's their choice. I think they've lost the money game anyway, so it doesn't really matter. Yeah, you're just going to be using it as and when you need it, blah blah blah, just like all the other chains. Because and you'll take a hit on the trust, and you'll think, well, is it worth me using? Can they go down in the 3 hours that I need to use it to quickly do a quick trade and then come back out and put my money into Minima or Bitcoin? But yeah, so the development process is still pretty centralized. But even that's, there's some great developers out there. There's some good developers in our tech group. We are not as large a chain or as large a development community as the others, but they could take the mantle. And as I said, they wouldn't have to do the blockchain-y stuff. It's really more a software optimization problem, which is quite a specific sort of, I can do that. Okay, so I can look at the code and see where the memory is and see how many threads you're using. And I can try to reduce that and do this and make that a bit faster and do this. But you're not actually changing Minima. You're not actually, that's done, complete. But that would be my only other centralization point. At some point, we'll have to
not shoot you in the head, but
yeah, something. I don't know.
You're right. The team itself is very, that is like probably the final piece.
Yeah,
and we'll get
that is the final piece.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, ordinarily at the back end of these calls, we would take questions from the community in an AMA segment, but we have run out of time. So what I'm going to suggest is we will jump into the stage questions channel at some point later this afternoon, and we can answer those questions there. But thank you, Mr. Spartacus Rex, for joining us today to outline all of this.
Spartacus Rex, not Mr. Rex, or you can call me Spartacus.
Mr. Rex. Spartacus Rex. Yes, so thank you very much for joining me on this call today to run through what's coming next, Russell. And thank you, as always, and especially to all of you that have listened in live. And as this is at the top, this has been recorded, and we will get the playback available for you all as soon as possible. With that, that's it for the both of us, and we'll catch up with you all again very soon. Cheers.
Thanks very much indeed, everyone. Thank you for